I got diagnosed, it took forever to get a diagnosis. Finally, I was heard. So the first doctor told me the words that I'll never forget: I'm going to wait and watch you get worse. And I have heard people say that recently. And I've actually heard that in conferences. I've heard presenters say, well, we need to watch and see how it worsens. But that's saying the same thing. So my first tip, if you're a doctor, rheumatologist, anything, be careful how you phrase that sentence because that I'll never forget it. I feel like I'm permanently just stained in my brain of that time. I felt helpless. I felt like, oh my gosh, you mean this is going to get worse? And it's a very, very tough thing to say to somebody. So that was my first negative experience of realizing, wow, I don't know what's going to happen to me and what does this mean for my longevity, my livelihood, all of that thing. And then the moving part, when I finally did get someone to diagnose me with something and treat me, and I started feeling much better, only to find out when I moved, because I was really in a good shape on a biologic and it had complete continuity of care. I wasn't sitting slumped over in a chair. I wasn't sleeping 16 hours a day. I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night in terrible pain and unable to move because I was on continuity of care. I had the right treatment. And they looked at me and said, well, your blood work is great. I don't see any radiographic damage. Cannot justify you being on this medication. So they took away my diagnosis and took me off or denied my treatment renewal. And that's how I found Al Kim. But anyway, so that's just one example of, and that happens. I wanted to point that out too, because I want people out there to know these kind of things happen to everyone, all different walks of people. You might think, oh, well, Tiffany, you're experienced in all of this. Well, it doesn't matter. But what I am grateful for is I knew enough to walk away. I knew it wasn't the right relationship. I wasn't getting what I needed. And I found a doctor who listened to me and who put me back on medication, thankfully, and put me on my way. So, Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you about sharing a story, something that could go in this ebook that we're creating.
So I'm going to share a good story. I'd like to end on a positive note. So I saw a patient who was having non-specific symptoms: fatigue, alternating diarrhea and constipation, brain fog, problem sleeping, probably things that a lot of us can relate to. And she was referred to see me because one of her tests, the anti-nuclear antibody, or ANA for short, was a little bit positive, not a ton. And we did a whole history and physical exam, did a whole slew of lab work. And at the end, at that point in time, I did not think that her ANA was indicative of an autoimmune condition. And I didn't think that her symptoms represented an autoimmune condition at that time. And she had some other aspects in her history that pointed maybe towards a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. And so the best part about this encounter was that she was so open to just listening and like letting me lay out all of my reasoning and take it in for whatever it was that I was offering her. And I was like, some as many people that were listening know, fibromyalgia has a terrible stigma associated with it. And I said, I'm not going to even put this in your chart because I don't want that to follow you. And if some people are going to try and make you feel like this is a problem in your head. This is not a problem in your head. We just don't know what causes it. And if we did know what caused it, we would have a treatment for it. And so, but there are things you can do. And this is, kind of like physical therapy and other stuff. And I've given this I've laid that framework so often, and not very many patients respond in a similar way, but she was just like so grateful for a possible explanation, and asked appropriate questions afterwards, and just wanted to make sure that she was on the right path moving forward. That in the end, it was a really wonderful experience, because I felt like it was a bi-directional exchange. Like she was telling me her story, I was kind of trying to put the pieces together, and then an opportunity for questions back and forth. And we were both left that encounter feeling like satisfied with what had happened.